Okay, so today we're going to take a look at tracking in PFTrack. So when you load up PFTrack, you'll get something like this. So you need to go to Create on Projects, type in the project name. So I'm going to call it PFTrack. This is related to the plate that I'm using. And then pick a path that you want to save it to. And when you're happy with the name and location, you can click Confirm. So now I'll bring up these different menus. And we have the Create tab down here. So before we do anything, we need to locate our plate. So we'll use this file browse on the right hand side. In the middle, this column is essentially the media bin. And then this is our actual workspace. So PFTrack is nodal based. So we'll create a tree of nodes to create our track. You can turn off and on these different tabs using these buttons here. But because I have no media in the file so far, I won't be able to close this one. This is the file browser, then the bin, and then the workspace area. So I'm just going to locate my plate. So I'll be using the footage from Hollywood VFX. I'll put a link in the description. Cool. So the resolution of this is a bit weird. It's 1280 by 1080, but that's fine. So the idea of the shot, so I know the frame rate, it says on the website, is 30 frames a second. The only thing I don't know is the film back. And it would be ideal to know what the film back is, because this is the essentially the sensor at the back of the camera called a CMOS sensor. So on analog cameras, that would be the mirror size. When you take a picture, when it flicks down the mirror to get that exposure, that would be related to this. So when you're filming VFX for yourself or for a project, then you would ideally pop in the CMOS sensor information, and you can just Google that for most cameras. It should be online. So this is the plate. You can see this timeline is turning green as it's caching. So if I scroll back a bit further, then it'll play it smooth. So the brief for the shot based on their website is to turn this plate so that this woman is in a F-14 or 15 fighter. Cool, that's pretty interesting. So what we'll do now is go to the Create tab. So you've got a few things here. So when you create a node, you'll go to here, and these are all the things you can play with, like different trackers. And the parameters, this is how you control what is selected in the node graph. So when I go there, it comes up with the plate settings. You have notes, probably not useful. And then we will get a mask tab when we start putting down tracker nodes. We also have enhance, which is color correcting for tracking, so in order to see markers clearer. So let's start with a user track. So this is the way of doing it manually. You should put in some manual markers first, just so you know they're going to be more accurate, rather than throwing down an auto track with like 1,000 points or something. Okay, so something to note is there are a few things we don't want to track. So this lady, so she's moving, we don't want to track that. This video is obviously the lady inside there, so we want to avoid that. I mean, the corners are fine, but this stuff here is moving, so we want to avoid that. And I know as soon as I auto track, it's going to throw points everywhere, including there. Areas such as reflections, so if a tracker pings onto one of these, we don't want that, because reflections are moving. You can actually see this line moving along there, but when it's auto tracking, it'll just throw so many points at different patterns and areas. Shadows as well, that's something to be aware of. Shadows moving. She's not actually moving that much, but we can see her wrist in the shadow down there. So we want areas of high contrast. So I could just pick this point there, but that looks like a marker. So now I could actually use the enhance tool. So if I look in the enhance, we have a few standard color correction areas. So we've got curves. So lift up camera and lower it. And then we have this color tab. So we can up the contrast a bit more, reduce the brightness, that sort of thing. And the marker enhancement. So this is essentially chroma keying the markers. And the way in which we do that, we press sample. So we pick the sample color, and then we get this. So that's not ideal. So then we can alter the range or the fall off. So this is the color range selected. So increase or decrease the specific color values. And then the range, as it says, it's the, this is the fall off of that area. So we could probably get away with something like that. So some of them we can see clearer, some of them we can't. So while I've got this selected, I could just place down my first tracker. So I'll go to select the user track, go to parameters, and I'm going to go to create and drop down this tracker. And so this first box, we're going to reshape it. This is the pattern box. Then this outer box is the search area. You can see my time slider has changed to a browny red color. And this just means that there's a tracker down, but it's not keyed. So it means now that I've placed it down, it's just going to be floating. It's not doing anything. And you see it says keyed, and then as soon as I move out into the browny gray area, it says estimated. So that's something to be aware of whenever you're tracking, putting down markers. You then want to hide them or remove any keyframes you don't want, because otherwise you're going to get this pointless information, essentially. Okay, so in the settings, we're going to leave the search mode the same. Deformation, that's for deforming the actual marker, so we're going to just leave everything to the same. Failure threshold, so the lower is the better. So this is the failure in terms of the pixel difference. So the threshold is similar to software such as Maya when it comes to rendering. So if you put this lower, then it's looking at getting less of a pixel variation. So the lower is the better, higher you'll get more trackers, but they might not be as valuable. So I'm going to leave that at 0.7. The maximum is 1. And I think everything else I will leave the same. You do have another few functions, but let's see what this does. So that my view stays on this tracker, I'm going to click center view so I can watch what it's doing. And I'll click forward. So this is the 2 arrows I clicked on, that was track forward, and it's stopped by itself. So I'm just going to go back a frame using left on my keypad, just the arrow keys. So and then you could scrub backward and forward. Okay. And then I'm going to hit forward again. So it will stop when it thinks there's too much of a change from the pattern. That looks okay to me, so I'll keep going forward and then increase the size of the pattern as the camera's getting nearer to it. Now I'm doing single frame tracks, and I think I'm going to leave it there. So you can see every time I started tracking and it puts in these yellow keyframes, and now I want to end it there because I know this is going to disappear out of the camera. But if I don't hide the keyframe, it's going to just be floating there. So I'm going to press H+, so that's hide forward, and H- hide back, or to hide a frame there. The same rule applies to this area down here. the remove key, so remove one keyframe, and then remove forward and remove back. So these forwards and backs, that's just in relation to where your white cursor is or where you are in the sequence. Okay, so I'm happy with that. So let's take a look for some other points. I'm going to go back to enhance and then turn it off because this is quite a trippy view to be looking at. So I might just look at the end of the sequence and pick one of these blue areas. So I'll turn on marker enhancement, but now it's still remembering the sample that I put in before. So I'm just going to reset that, so double click it twice because it will say yes, question mark. And then click sample, select the blue color, and I'm just going to pull up this range a bit. And then before I start tracking, I'm just going to go backwards to see how long it stays in there. Cool. Yeah, we can get a bit of time out of that. So I'm going to go back to the create tab, sorry, the parameters tab. I'm already selecting the user track node. Or click create and increase the pattern size to encompass that area, slightly increase the search area, and now I will use the backwards track button. And if you hover over any of the buttons, it does come up and it even says the keyboard shortcut is open bracket. I didn't press center view, so you've noticed that it looked like the tracker just flew away from me. So if I want to watch that back, I can hit center view and scrub back. That wasn't too bad. So I think I will leave that one there and hide to the beginning. So I hit H- twice. Okay, I'm going to turn off the enhancement, take a look at the footage. So I'm going to track a few points without the enhancement, but there's a lot of green screen, so it's probably worth using it for this shot. So now I'm going to add an auto track, and ideally you would have a lot more user tracks. So I've done 4, so maybe aim for 8 to 12 on a shot, because you need a lot of varied points. So I'm going to go to create and create an auto track, and because I was already using the user track, then it plugs in right above it. And what we can do is in PFTrack use our points as a guide. So if we look in this parameters area on the auto track, this guide button is highlighted, but if you were just to use an auto track on its own, this will be off. So we have the candidate number. This is the amount of points that PFTrack is going to throw at the sequence per frame. Then we have the target number. It's actually hovering over it, it'll just actually say the target number of trackers in each frame to select from the candidates. From personal experience, the candidate number, if you ever put it up to 300 or more than 300, it seems to crash in my experience. Or maybe it was just the computers I was using, but I've tried it at different workplaces. That's something to be aware of, so keep that below 300. And you've got the selection, the amount it will pick, and the minimum keyframed length. And then we have the failure threshold again. The only thing I'm going to change is probably the search mode to better accuracy, so it will take longer. Consistency, if you do have specific types of motion, so I could possibly change this to rotation / planar, because you could see this camera is on a track, and then it rotates, but it's also dollying up. So I might just see the result I get first with the consistency as local motion, and then change it to planar, rotation / planar towards the end. Like if I'm not happy with this first auto track, then I will probably change that. Feature scale will just be the size of your tracking points, and aside from that, I think a lot of these bits are self-explanatory. If I hit preview down here, it will give an estimation at the points it thinks it will pick up, and I think, as I said earlier, this woman is being picked up. It will always pick up the actors, so you'll end up just having to completely wipe out all these points, select them and delete them once. The alternative is to use this mask area, and this is essentially rotoscoping. So if you've ever experienced that, in this area you can also import masks into, from other software like After Effects or Nuke. And the way in which you would do that is you would have to get the sequence, load up your file browser, and then drop it into this bin. And then I think from when it's in the bin, then you can drag and drop into there. So if you have a sequence which is just pure black and white, then you can drag and drop it into this mask area. So if I wanted to do a mask, I could just put some points down. So I'm using the Bezier roto. So I could do that and then move along. So this, whenever you put down any sort of keys for it automatically keys, but whenever you move these points, they will spline from one keyed area to the next. So that's why I've scrolled later down the line. So I'll just select this entire chair. And as I scroll back, it's actually morphed from one shape to another. And you can see the keyframes that's put down. So now I'll pick somewhere in the middle. And pull it in closer to her. So this is not perfect, but it's only for the purpose of stopping PFTrack just throwing loads of extra points at this lady. I'm sure it will end up putting points on this TV, but I'm just going to roughly do this. You can also use the marquee tool to select all the points. So what I've done there is you click on the marquee, select all the points, turn off the marquee, and then I can move them. Let's look at the mask. It's amazing. So I'm just going to pop in one more keyframe. So I'll select marquee because I can't be bothered to move the points. Turn it off again. Just shift. Cool. So now I'll go back to parameters. Maybe I will actually change the consistency of rotation / planar. The candidate number I'm going to up to about 120. Target number, let's put 60, actually 150. So I'm going to let this auto track and just see what it comes up with. Okay, now with the footage auto tracked as well as a few user tracks, I'm going to scroll through it and take a look. So we have quite a nice consistency of the points. So what I'm doing is looking for any very erratic ones. Generally speaking, you will get at least a few. But this perfect Bezier mask has solved a lot of the issues. Because I know PFTrack really wanted to track this lady. Oh, look at that. I can see some points on the TV. Yeah, I'm not happy with that. So I'm going to remove this point so I can just select it. Or I can use the marquee tool. So the marquee button is down bottom right. I think the hotkey is Control M. So I could just select that. Or if I want to select a few points, then I could do that. If I want to lasso a few points, I can hold Control and Shift, I believe. So it's Shift to select using the marquee. So you draw out that. And holding down Control will allow you to select more. So I'll select one and select the next. And then hit delete on my keyboard. So hitting it once does nothing, but in the bottom area you can see the delete function questions what you're doing. So then I'll click yes again. So this footage there, I'm not sure if that's actually moving, like it could be flickering slightly. So I'm going to have faith for the moment. And I don't see any other particular points that are freaking out. So we can move on to the next step. So I'll go to Create and Camera Solve. Great. Okay, so it's put in the ground plane, because what it's going to do is look at our points. We have placed a number of points on this footage in a 2D space. So the camera solver then tries to put them into a 3D space. So now we get this ground plane. So at the moment, there is no 3D camera, so there is no solve. So this ground plane will just be static. And we have a number of options here. So ideally you would know the focal length and the film back. So the CMOS sensor, ideally you would pop that in, but I have no idea what any of these are. You have a few areas that you can look at, such as focal distortion, the list of the trackers, constraints to areas. This is the main one we will look at, the errors. So there is another option you can turn on, exhaustive. As you can see there, it says when enabled, the solver will run slower but may give more accurate results. So that sounds good to me. So I will turn that on and hit solve all. Cool. Okay, so we have a solve. But what is going on? Look how crazy that is. So it can't really work out where the ground's meant to be. And you see these red points, they're actually the deviation away in relation to the 2D points. So these red dots, that's where PFTrack thinks the 3D points should go, and it shows you their deviation from the 2D points. So if I go to my errors area, I'll go fit view, and we can see as it gets to this middle point, we're getting the most amount of errors. You can actually see it completely flips out. And this white line in here, so I'm using holding right click down to move up and down. And so we have the timeline is the bottom bit, and this white line is the average error. So this ideally would be at about 0.8, so all the way down here. That's, 0.8 or lower, that would be ideal. So based on the terrible result we got, I would say that we probably need to either look at the auto trackers, because normally what you would do if you think the solve is going okay, then you would start to deactivate points, like selecting points there, deactivate, and then refine all. But I think this is not a particularly great resolve, so I might go back to the auto tracking phase and take a look. Okay, so I extended my trackers further with the auto tracker just to put a few more things in place, and what I've done is I've resolved using the solve tool, and I put my initialized focal length as 25 or 20-ish. So let's take a look at the motion now. So the motion's looking better. Our average error's down. They're still peaking. This whole area there, I could just brute force, deactivate, refine all. Whoops, fit to view, and I'm going to deactivate, but I need to be aware of how many are in there. And refine all. Okay, so assuming that was a perfect track, it's just it's a process of going back and forward. So ideally with a shot, I should have put down probably 10 to 12, if not more, trackers. But at the moment I've put in 4, and then I threw loads of auto tracks at it. So we have this, we've got this sort of starting point, and then it will be a process of probably adding your own trackers and trying a few solves with that. And once you're happy with the solve, then you can select to create and then go to orient scene. I would normally do this in Maya, but you can use this as a start point. So you pick a point, and where is it? Set origin. So we could say that's the center of our scene, or we could pick this lady. Well, actually that point is not actually on her, we did mask her, so this is probably the nearest point. And where is it? There's edit mode and rotate. So then we can start to alter this, the actual ground plane. We have this line across, that's the horizon line, based on where our origin is. Okay, so that's there. And once you've done any of that or more of that, then you can always go to adding objects. Actually, is that in the Orienting? No, it's not. Test objects, where is that? So test object, there we go. So I've noticed with test objects, you get a few in here. But if you want to add any of your custom geometry or even just cubes, then you need to import them from Maya. But most of the time when I've imported geometry from Maya, it flips it. So it flips the normals, so the faces are inverted. So a strange hack I would recommend is, even if you just want a cube, when you're in Maya, go to, I think it's mesh display and reverse. So reverse the normals. So in Maya it will look inverted, but when you bring it in here, it will be showing the correct way around. It's quite weird. So we have a few objects. I might as well put all of them in. So import, add scene, cow's head, mushroom, add scene, tool marker, thumbtack. The tool marker and thumbtack are the most useful ones. So I'm going to select, actually you can see them all, so they get put at the origin. What I can do is select, you can place them, so you can do interaction mode, and then you can fly, will let you drag them around, translate, self-explanatory. So the one that I want to use is place at select feature, so I can select one of these and change that, and then pick a point. So there. So I've just put a cow there. If you want to see what it looks like, I can scale it up for you. Selecting the middle box will scale uniformly. And then I can rotate it to camera. So I'll scale this one as well. This is just the head. So this is just their logo. I'll do place at selected feature, and I'll just drop it over there. Tool marker. I'll just pick some random points. Thumbtack, that could go there. Mushroom, that could go there. I'll put in some more thumbtacks. So now we're starting to populate the scene. Putting another cow, another mushroom, another thumbtack, just for variety, but they're not particularly useful. What did I put there? Oh, that's cow's head too, I think. No, cow too. Let's pop the cow there. And let's scale our cow. Okay, I'm just going to play through this. So this certainly needs refining, but that was a good start point. Tracking is something that can take a number of days. There's no time limit. A lot of the tutorials you'll see on YouTube, they'll just find the easiest clip and then just be like, oh yeah, we can just put down 3 trackers, hit track, solve, and you're done. That's not quite the case. So this is not the hardest shot in the world, but it's not the easiest. But this is the result we can get in a fairly short amount of time. So this would certainly need refining. We're getting the jitters in there. So there might need to be more constraints added. It would be ideal to know the focal length. So I did put an approximation down of 25 or 20. But I don't know much about this plate apart from the resolution and the frames per second. So when you're happy with that, let's say that was final, then you can create, and there's an export. Oh, it's thinking about it. What's it doing? Okay. And depending on the software you use, you've got a number of exports. So I would be putting this into Maya. I think there is a Maya specific one. Yeah, these ones. But I still end up using the FBX. That was just through habit, but you can give it a go and see what the difference is. But you have a number of options here. The scale can be changed within PFTrack, but generally it's very small. So mine's in centimeters, and this origin here will pretty much be the same size as in Maya. So in Maya, each square is 1 centimeter. So what I do is I normally export an FBX, put it in Maya, and then encompass all of it. So you get this PFTrack scene node, and then I put that in a group and scale it, and then I lock that group, and then I put another group on top, and then I rotate to any particular angle that I might want just in my scene. It's just so I can rotate the camera and the markers just into the location I want, so I keep my models in world space. But aside from that, that's pretty much it. So that's just an introduction to tracking in PFTrack. And so it does take quite a bit of time to get a nice track. It's a lot of back and forward. But with a shot like this, I would probably end up spending like a day, if not a few more days on it. I think in the past I have spent like a week on a shot. But this will show you everything you needed to get started with tracking in PFTrack, and I hope you enjoyed it.